Hey everybody, it's me, Hugh, from that channel, and I'm here right now with Olivier Wagner from 1040 Abroad. Olivier, great to have you back here.
Thank you for having me.
And people can see right down below, right there. Where is it? Right there. 1040abroad.com. That's the website where you can go and make contact with Olivier. And essentially, let's just Olivier, maybe just start by just saying who this video is for right now.
So this video is for Americans overseas, in Canada or elsewhere. And the topic is the COVID-19 stimulus checks.
Right. So first of all, this is for Americans who are living abroad.
Right.
Hence the name 1040 Abroad.
Right.
And you're an accountant, and we're talking about the tax implications and actually solutions to the problems.
Right, exactly. Well, this is less of a problem this time, for a change. Yes, I'm an accountant, I'm an annual agent, I'm a CPA in New Hampshire. And today we'll be discussing the stimulus checks. So as COVID-19 hit and had an impact on the economy, first the Trump administration and then the Biden administration issued these stimulus checks, which are pretty close to the guaranteed income concept, in that almost everybody's eligible. You need to have a social security number that allows you to work and make less than $75,000 to get the full stimulus checks. The first check of $1,200 was passed in March 2020. The second one of $1,200 in December 2020. And the third one of $1,400 is being distributed right now.
Okay, so this is so these are stimulus checks. I mean, people in Canada were familiar to the CERB payments and that sort of thing, and of course the government's trying to stimulate the economy by giving out the money, and of course helping people who may not be working because of the lockdowns and that sort of thing. So this is for Americans. So my first question is, are Americans living in Canada who are making less than $75,000 US, I guess, are they eligible to get these stimulus checks as well?
Yes, absolutely. And to the extent that they had a 2019 tax return on file, they would have received it automatically. And the reason why I'm talking about this topic now is that if you didn't receive your check, or if you didn't file a 2019 tax return and therefore the IRS didn't know about you, you can request the first two checks as a refund on your 2020 tax return.
Okay, so in other words, there's probably people out there that haven't received their checks.
Oh, yes. There's a large proportion of the Americans overseas who are not tax compliant. They don't file a tax return. And in this specific instance, that meant that this check that was sent to everybody was not sent to them.
Okay, but you know the secret formula for getting these checks sent to you, or
exactly,
or you get it back as a refund, right?
Right. So the last two checks, the last ones were sent in February 2021. If you didn't receive it by then, you're not going to receive it as part of the regular checks that they sent without applying for it. But on your 2020 tax return, it will become a refund or tax credit, and you can get it then. So yes, absolutely, go on my website, fill out the contact form, and I'll be happy to help you with that.
Okay. So is it now people that are more than 75,000 US, I guess it's not an issue for those people. They don't have to.
Well, there's a phase out. You don't lose all of the stimulus checks. Yeah. Just because you make more than $75,000. The upper limit for the third check that was just passed is at $80,000. So the phase out drops quite quickly.
Yeah.
It was at $200,000 for the first check, $87,000, $500 for the second check. So if you made somewhere between $75,000 and this upper limit, your check was prorated and you got a partial check. If it was more than that upper limit I just mentioned, then you wouldn't have received anything.
Mm-hmm. But again, for Americans living abroad, they may not be compliant with their taxes, and they may not need the stimulus checks. And I'm just wondering if say someone is, falls into the category of people who should be watching this video, if they would it might be possible that it's not even worth getting or applying for the stimulus?
What I've seen is people want to get into compliance, and the fee for the Streamlined package, 3 years of tax return and plus 2020, is essentially covered by the stimulus checks. They can get into compliance and use the stimulus checks to pay for my fees. That might not be the way it was intended at first, but that would be one way to get into compliance. And then once you're into compliance, you can decide if you want to give up your US citizenship or not, which was the topic of our previous video.
So I'm just curious, because you mentioned there's a lot of people that may not be compliant at all.
Right.
And how serious of a problem is that?
Well, until the IRS contacts you, it's not a problem. There are people who've been staying under the radar for decades. The issue comes from FATCA since 2011. Foreign banks have to identify their US citizen clients and report the bank account information to the IRS. And the IRS might try to match that information with the tax return, with the Form 8938. And then if the IRS contacts you before you come forward, then the penalties, interest, etc., would not be abated the way it would be if you come forward first.
Oh, so how does that work? So what you're saying is if somebody is to, maybe they're not compliant, maybe not for years, but if they come and contact the IRS first, they're going to maybe save a lot of grief?
Yes. The IRS created a procedure for people in this situation. It's called the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedure. Requires 3 years of tax return, 6 years of FBARs. The only condition is to have spent at least 330 days in a foreign country in one of these 3 years. So back in the days, I had someone, I was in Quebec at the time, the client was in Quebec. And they went to Vermont to fill up their tank every week. And so that was 52 days a year. So they didn't meet that criterion. Well, now, thanks to COVID, I don't think he's going to Vermont to get some gas anymore. But
so just by getting gas meant that they weren't living in Canada 330 days?
Right. Every partial day is counted as a day in the US. That's the test of the physical presence test for the foreign income exclusion.
Okay.
That's the test used for the Streamlined Foreign Offshore Procedures.
Right. That's pretty interesting. So, so for people watching this, so maybe they want to, but of course you can help them determine if they should maybe come clean, or maybe they should stay under the radar.
Or the extent to which they'll receive these stimulus checks and it will help them either cover my fee or have something extra. The same happens to those who have children. They are eligible for the additional child tax credit, which is a refundable credit of $1,400 per year per child. So these can be Americans who live in Canada, have children. They would be entitled to the stimulus check as well as the additional child tax credit. So they would actually get money from the US government by filing their tax returns.
So I guess really, most people don't like thinking about tax.
Right.
For a lot of reasons. One of them being that they might have to pay money out of their pocket. But there's a lot. It sounds like you kind of know what is available from the government or what programs might be able to put some money back into people's pockets.
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, simply contact me, use the contact form on my website, and ask about either the stimulus checks or the additional child tax credit, and I'll let you know whether you're eligible or not.
Okay. And is there anything else we should talk about, or anything else, any other considerations that people might be going through that, especially in the context of these stimulus checks that are that are
Right.
happening?
A good thing is that these stimulus checks are not taxable in the US and they're not taxable in Canada. In the US, because they are passed as a refundable tax credit, tax credits are not taxed. And the Tax Act in Canada is written such that it lists the different categories of income that are taxable in Canada. And of course, when the Tax Act was passed, they didn't think about these stimulus checks in the US. As such, it's not taxable in Canada. The reverse is not true. The Internal Revenue Code in the US says that all income is taxable unless specifically exempt, which means that the SERB payments in Canada are taxable in the US, but they're still eligible for foreign tax credit. You get a dollar for dollar credit for taxes paid to Canada, which means that at the end of the day, you won't pay actual tax on it, but you will still report it as part of your income.
Boy, that sounds complicated. So just because we've got stimulus checks coming from two different governments,
right,
potentially, some are non-taxable, some are taxable in the other country. And I'm just curious, like, do they have to choose which country wants to tax them, or do they have to pay tax to both governments, or?
They would only pay tax to Canada. As I mentioned, the US stimulus checks are not taxed in either of them.
Right.
The SERB payments are taxed in both countries. But they're sourced in Canada, which means that they would pay tax to Canada first.
Okay.
And they would get foreign tax credits in the US, which is the mechanism that we would use in most cases anyway. What that means is that they get a dollar for dollar credit for taxes paid to Canada. They would only pay the difference if the Canadian tax rate was lower than the US tax rate, which generally is not the case.
See, this is why we have accountants.
Right.
And especially tax accountants, and especially ones that have expertise, for people living in a foreign country, because it really is a very unique situation. And do you have any idea do you think people are losing money who aren't dealing with, say, someone like you, who are trying to maybe do their taxes themselves, and the rules are so intricate that it's almost a specialty to figure out how that works?
I mean, there are instances in which they might do their taxes themselves and be okay. There are instances in which that can become problematic, especially if you give up your US citizenship, you have to certify that you are compliant for the prior 5 years. You might not be compliant and not realize it, which could trigger the exit tax in that context. And there are trickier situations: investment income, PFIC, foreign corporation, people who sell their primary residence. Definitely contact me before you sell your primary residence. It's not taxed in Canada. There's a more complicated answer on the US side. So yes, there are these issues that can cause them to owe tax, to not have the appropriate tax planning, or to owe the exit tax if they give up their US citizenship. So yeah, preparing their taxes themselves might work in many situations, but that might also come back to bite them.
Or maybe they could even, probably a lot of people aren't even aware that these stimulus checks are available to people living in Canada.
Right. Yes, my clients are surprised oftentimes when I tell them.
Okay. Anything else we should talk about? I mean, it's
No, I think we got it covered.
Okay. So the bottom line here really, though, is, again, for Americans living in Canada or anywhere,
yes,
except the US, living outside of the US.
They got it even if they lived in the US. Every US citizen who filed their 2019 tax return received it.
Okay. But what I'm saying is that for people watching this right now, American citizens living in Canada or living in any other foreign country, you can help them with their tax situation.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. If you have not received your stimulus checks already, contact me and I'll let you know if you're eligible and how to claim it on your 2020 tax return.
Okay. And again, the best way, they can go to the website, 1040abroad.com. Is there anything else, an email or anything else you want to leave people with?
No, just use the contact form and we'll take it from there.
Okay. And usually how long does it take for you to get back to people?
24 hours.
24 hours. Okay.
Right.
All right, great. Olivier, thanks again. Thanks for giving this important information. And people can check it out, 1040abroad.com. Thanks, Olivier.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Have a good one.